Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Chevy Silverado 2500, we're going to be showing you how to install the B&W inbed fifth wheel rails with the custom installation kit. But before we do that, why don't we check this out and make sure it's going to work for you. For those of you trying to pull your fifth wheel trailer behind your Chevy, obviously you're going to need a way to hook up to it. And so that's where the rails are going to come into play. These are actually going to give us an attachment point. That way we can drop our fifth wheel hitch into place, pin it down, hook up to our trailer, and tow it to where we're going. With that said, the B&W rails, these are going to work with a ton of different hitches. They kind of have the industry standard attachment points there. So a lot of different types are going to work. Chances are really good, unless you have a really old one or one that's kind of an oddball size or shape, whatever hitch you got, chances are really good to drop in. You'll be able to lock it down and pin it down into the rails. With that said, if you're looking for a hitch, there's quite a few options. I'm a big fan of the B&W Patriot, and particularly the sliding one, for those of you that have short bed trucks. And the reason for that, that hitch will actually, whenever you're making really sharp turns and stuff, you can get out, unlock it, and slide it back maybe a foot or so. What that's going to do is provide you with the cab clearance, because with these short beds, and a lot of fifth wheel trailers have that overhang, what can happen, you make those super sharp turns and you can actually bang the front of your trailer into the cab corners. Obviously you don't want that. So that's where that sliding hitch comes into play. You'll gain that little bit of extra clearance. For those of you with long beds, a fixed type hitch will work just fine. Again, B&W has several of them that are really nice, and they just flat out work. To me, it makes sense if you got the B&W rails paired up with the B&W actual hitch. And with that in mind, so I kind of talked about the short and long beds. This particular kit is going to work with both. So today we have the short bed, just to kind of put it out there and give you an example. When it comes to fifth wheel rail kits, there's quite a few different options out there, and although it's a kind of a simple piece, there's more to it than that. They're definitely not all created equal by any means. The big thing that I see with them is the quality and just the overall fitment. So this one's custom fit to your particular truck, so you know it's going to line up. And even then, that doesn't always hold true for all manufacturers. But I've done a lot of fifth wheel rails, gooseneck hitches, all that type of stuff. And time again, B&W kind of comes out on top. Everything just fits right. Everything lines up properly. You don't have to fight it. And that's why I always kind of lean on B&W. So if it were me, if I was putting something like this in my truck or a buddy's truck, that's what I would always recommend, no doubt about it. And honestly, you know, I feel like that's really important. You got a nice, reliable truck to do your towing. You're going to want something that's reliable and keep everything connected and give you that confidence whenever you're pulling your trailer down the road. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our truck, and first thing you want to do is temporarily lower and remove the spare tire. This gives us a lot more room to work, so I went ahead and did that. And what we're going to do now, this metal heat shield here, we're also going to take that off, and that's going to be held in place with two bolts on this side of it. So to get this off, the two bolts, one of them will be here, and they're going to have a 13 millimeter head. Grab your socket, break them loose, and get them removed. We'll lower this down and get it out of the way for now. Now moving up inside the bed of the truck, we can determine our rear rail location. So there's a couple of measurements in your instructions that you can follow. Pay attention to them because it does make a difference if you have a long or a short bed. Today's case, we have a short bed, so that's what I went with. But what you're going to do is take that measurement and you're going to go from the end of the bed itself up, make a mark, and the back edge of our rail, that's where it's going to line up with that mark. And I want to mention too, if you have a spray and bed liner like this one, take that extra thickness into account, so you may need to add a little bit more to get it where it needs to be. But what I like to do is take several measurements, use a ballpoint pen. I find that it's just a little more accurate, a little easy to work with. Line the front edge of a rail up, and then we want to make sure it's centered. All right, so you got the same distance in between the end of each rail to the wheel well. So once it's centered and you got it exactly where you want, I like to take my pen and just kind of trace all the way around it. That way we have the exact positioning. And then what we're able to do is mark out our holes here that we're going to use to actually mount this up. The mounting locations that we're going to use will be these holes here. So one, two, the third one in. And you can mark the center, you can use a punch. What I like to do is take my pen and trace that square around it. That way I can, once you move this out of the way, I can find the dead center of it. So we got these. If we follow along, we're going to be using this one here in the middle. So this one's closer to the back of the truck. So same deal there. And following along, again, the third square in, mark them out. And with that done, now we can move our rail out of the way and begin to start to drill out some pilot holes. Before you drill through this, look underneath the truck, make sure you're not going to hit anything of importance. So I checked that, we're all good. And I'm just going to line up there in the center of our square and drill all these out. At this point we can move to our wheel well liners here. And your truck may or may not have these. If they don't, you obviously don't need to worry about it, but ours does. If we look, we're going to have 3 T15 Torx bit screws, and we're going to pull these out. That way we're able to fold this up and get access to the frame. Down the road, if this is still in the way and it's hard to see or anything like that, we can always come back and pull more of the screws out and take these out completely if we need to, but we'll see if we can work around it like this for now. Save us a little bit of time because these liners are kind of a pain to get back in. So we'll just do this for now. With them like that, now when we need to, we're able to kind of fold these up and see our frame a little bit better. While we're right here, if you peel up your liners, you can check for overload brackets, which would be connected to the frame at the ends and above our leaf springs. Our truck doesn't have them, so we obviously don't need to worry about it. If yours does, you will need to remove them. And if that's the case, check the instructions. They'll tell you what you need to do to get those out of the way. We're going to be working with this top hole first, and you want to take your pull wire and the straight end of it you can put through the big hole, run it through, completely through the frame. And then what you can do is grab one of these blocks and put the coiled end of the fish wire through that top hole. And then we're going to take a carriage bolt that's going to thread onto the fish wire, and then we can drop this in the frame, pull our bolt through. And what we're going to do, that second, or that very bottom hole that was in our big spacer block there, you want that to be lined up, and essentially we're going to do the same thing. So take our fish wire, and feed it through. Carriage bolt. I'll get threaded on. We'll simply pull this through. So in our wheel well now, you can see where our bolts came through, and what you're going to do, take one of them, just apply some pressure on it so it doesn't fall back into the frame. You can remove the pull wire, and then you want to take one of these retainers, and that's going to thread on Get it started here. And all this is doing is keeping everything tight, essentially, preventing the hardware from falling back in. So we'll run that down as much as we can. Then essentially we're just going to do the same exact thing for this one here. Once those are on there, we can take these spacers, and you're only going to use these if you did not have the overload brackets. So if you end up taking the overload brackets off, it sounds like you don't need to use these. So we didn't have them though, so we'll slide those on. And then we can take our frame bracket. So these are side specific. Make sure to see the instructions, the parts layout, make sure you get the right one. But this is just going to fit, or slide rather, right over them bolts. And then we can get our finishing hardware on there. So you're gonna have a split lock washer and a hex nut. Get that started. We're only going to get these hand tight for now. And I want to mention from this point on, anything we do to one side of our truck, we're going to do to the other side, because it'll all be set up pretty much the exact same way. So get these hand tight and continue on here. What we can do now is verify that the pre-drilled holes that we created line up with the holes in our bracket. And I did switch over here to the driver's side. There's a lot more room. It's just a lot easier to see and understand what's going on. So you want to hold your side plate flat against the bed, and then you can look up and check your pre-drilled holes, and you want them to be pretty much in the center there. Ours are really close, so we're in pretty good shape. And once you verify that, we'll be able to enlarge the holes and go from there. Now that we verified the holes do line up, we can come back up to the top here in the bed and enlarge the holes to 9/16 in diameter. What I like to do once our holes are made is come back with a paint stick and just put some paint on that bare metal to help protect against rust. You can always use spray paint too, but what I've found, especially with these trucks, with these bed liners, even if you use clear spray paint, you can kind of see that overspray, and to me it's just kind of annoying. So I like using this, does the same thing, and gets a layer of protection on that bare metal. I went ahead, grabbed our rail, put it back in place, and now we can take the carriage bolts, and we're simply just going to drop them down on through, get everything else going here. Underneath you can see where our bolts came through our side plates, and I got this one going already, but these are already set up the same. You can take these U-shaped spacer blocks. That's going to fit in there. If yours is really tight, you can loosen up these side plates a little bit more, and usually that'll let them drop down and make it a little easier, a little more manageable to get that in there. Well, what you're going to do from there is take this block here. It's a offset hole in it. You're going to put that on, and then a split lock washer, and then a nut, and we're just going to get these hand tight. For the hardware and the middle attachment point, you're going to use the same combo: U-shaped spacer block, offset hole washer, split lock washer, and a hex nut. Moving back up into the bed, now we can position our front rail, and you are going to need the fifth wheel base to do this. So you take your base, put it into the back rail, and then that's going to determine where our front rail needs to go. So get the front rail in, drop the base into position, make sure it's sitting flat and the way you want it, and then you can push the base towards the back of the truck. So it might move back just a little bit, you know. So you push it back, and you want to take your front rail here and pull that towards the front of the truck. So you might get a little bit of movement, but once you have it like that, you want to make sure that the front rail is centered, and just like the back one, you know, measure from each end, make sure the same on each side. And once you have it where you want it, where it's centered and straight and everything's in place, then we can mark out our attachment points. So pretty much the same as the back rail. You're going to be using these two holes, and I did the same thing, just traced out there where they are. It'll be the same on the other side, the other end of our rail. Really the only difference is going to be in the middle. Instead of using this one like we did on the back, we're just going to be using this one. Once all the pilot holes are made, again, we can come back and enlarge the holes to the final size of 9/16. Now back to our wheel well, we can get our front brackets in. I do want to mention too, depending on if you had those overload stop deals bolted up to your frame or not, if you had those, the hardware and the way to get the brackets on will be a little bit different. So see the instructions, but this is what we got, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to be using these two holes, and then this larger oval shaped hole will be how we're going to get the hardware in. So you take your pull wires, the coiled end, feed it through, pull it out of the top, like so. And then you're going to take the steel, and you want this, the side that has two holes, you want to be towards the top. So take the top wire, you're going to put it through that hole. Obviously the bottom wire will go through there. And then we'll take our carriage bolts. Then we're going to feed this in and try to keep it oriented correctly here. I'm going to pull the top one in through first, and then hopefully that'll kind of line the bottom one up better. So once you have those through, you can then remove the pull wires, and just like the other ones, take one of the retainers, put those bolts in. Now we can take our side plate. Again, these are specific to each side of the vehicle, so make sure you have the right one. But that'll slide over, and then with these, you're going to take flat washer, slide that on, a split lock washer, and then a nut. Same deal with this one up here. And we'll just get these hand tight. Back up top, get your rail line back up, get your fifth wheel base put in. So drop it down into the rails. Then you're going to take the carriage bolts, just like the back rail, and push those into place. And then what I like to do is just take the pins that hold your fifth wheel base in and just put those through. Get everything lined up. Obviously you want to put the pin in each corner of it. And just from past experience, I've noticed by doing this and leaving the base in here when we go to tighten everything down and whatnot, it just helps prevent everything from shifting around and makes it just a better fit overall. Underneath the truck, we got on all of our hardware to attach the front rail to the side plates. Same exact setup as the back rail. Your bolts come through, put on an offset hole spacer block, split lock washer, and a nut. And then of course in between the side plate and the bottom of our truck bed, you want to put in one of those U-shaped spacer blocks, just like the back. With that said, up front here, it's a little bit tighter. One thing I did to make it easier was I just used some clear tape and taped on the split lock washer to this offset hole spacer block, and obviously cut the tape out where the bolt needs to go through, but made it a little bit easier because it's one piece instead of kind of trying to hold a couple different pieces up there. And one thing that I've always wanted to try, I've never had the chance to, maybe it'll work, I think it would be to do this setup. So tape these together and then get hot glue. Maybe just put a dab or two of hot glue on this and line it up and stick it to the bottom of your side plate there. That way it'll hold in place, and all you have to do then is just simply just put the nut on instead of trying to hold everything from moving around and whatnot. So if you're struggling with that, that's always an option to try. Like I said, I never have. I always wanted to. I think it would work pretty good. But yeah, with that said, that hardware combo that we used here, you're going to use for the remaining bolts to secure your front rail. Now we can come back and snug up all the hardware. There is a tightening sequence that we want to follow, just tightening as well as torquing. And we want to tighten up the bolts that are holding the inbed rails down first. So you'll have your two on each side, your one in the middle, two on the other side. And once those are snug, then we can come back and snug up the bolts holding on the side frame plates. Then once that's done, we'll come back and torque everything in that same sequence. So I'll grab a 19 or 3/4 inch socket and get that done. Once we have everything snug, we can come back and torque it using a torque wrench. And we're going to use that same tightening sequence. The torque numbers are in the instructions. And if you don't have a torque wrench, you can get one here at eTrailer. A lot of times, go to your local auto parts store. They have them there available that you can rent, usually for free. I do suggest, so a lot of these bolts are really tight, and so it's hard to get a regular type socket in there. So you can use a tool like this. I call it a dog bone. I'm sure there's another name for it, or crow's foot type end would work as well. So just kind of a heads up there. You want a 3/4, or even, they don't have that, a 19 millimeter or two. But that said, we'll go ahead and get everything torqued down. Once you have all the hardware torqued, then we're pretty much ready to go. You will have to resecure your wheel aligners. You can pop your heat shield back into place underneath the truck, and then simply raise the spare tire back into position. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the B&W inbed fifth wheel rails with the custom installation kit on our 2022 Chevrolet Silverado 2500.